From Svitek comes a weekly digital series where he shares his insights, concepts, and findings learned during his 15-year journey of working in the entertainment industry. Each lesson offers you a roadmap to overcome the challenges that all artists face on the path to success. Welcome to a Svitek podcast.
Hello everyone, my name is Svitek, 360 creative coach, and it is my pleasure and privilege, if you will, to deliver lessons of all kinds to creatives to help them succeed in their own projects. And part of how I do that, and what is a true joy for me, is when I get to bring on creatives that I know personally and that I've worked with personally. And so today is kind of a very special occasion on a number of fronts because I'm joined by Edgar Cortes Angarita, who is the sound mixer, sound designer of my feature film, Idyll. And it feels like a huge milestone because we just pretty much finalized the sound. And so that's a big victory for all of us, especially in a time right now in the pandemic where it feels like there's not a lot of victories to be had. So, and before we kind of get into it, I want to give a little bit of context and perhaps hopefully embarrass him by the quality of his work. So Edgar, I met him through Upwork, which is, if you're a freelancer or if you're looking to hire freelancers, it's a great resource. And I was looking for a mixer to kind of take the movie, in this final stage of the sound. And he just really took me as someone that not only was willing to do the project, had an idea of what he really wanted to deliver. He saw the movie in terms of the themes and wanted to amplify what was there. And I got to say, you truly did. You took things that I didn't think of, that's and kind of really added layers in very specific moments that just like I'm in awe of. So kudos to you.
Thank you.
So I guess let's start here. I guess in terms of what drew you to the project initially for this task specifically?
Well, the first thing I saw, in Upwork, it's pretty tough kind of to get through all the work that is there. I've been in the business for so long and just recently got into Upwork. So I started kind of checking out projects, and most of them are kind of podcast editing and some sound design for little games, like apps for games. But as soon as I saw kind of a feature film that needed kind of work, and of course I clicked. I didn't really care much about the how much money it was going to pay. I just wanted to do something totally different because I've done the podcast editing and all that stuff. But really, the project kind of took me by. That it needed kind of my feedback, not just kind of a guy that edits sound and that's it. Just for me to kind of bring my experience doing sound for films and TV into a project. And it was great that you called me back because you get kind of 10 inquiries and none of them kind of click back, but you called me back and we started talking and so we started. That's more or less how I wanted to. I wanted to do something totally different, and your project was exactly what I wanted to do. A feature film, foreign to me because I'm from Colombia, and something that brought in kind of creativity from my part.
Mm-hmm. And what was kind of the most like exciting part of the project once you kind of dug in? It doesn't have to be like initial things, because for anyone kind of watching this, really, at least in this time, like hasn't seen the movie, right? But there's voiceover narration, there's internal kind of like conflicting ideologies. It's like voices in a person's head. There's other things, like there's a lot of stuff to potentially play with, at least in my opinion, from the sound. So like anything in particular that was like, ooh, this is really exciting for me.
Well, as soon as I saw the structure of the film, that is kind of 3 stories interconnected, and I could do something like callbacks from each story to the other story. I mean, if it's three characters that meet or don't meet but really kind of intersect at one point, I wanted to bring callbacks through sound in each one of the stories. So if Jane walked through a scene with Vincent, I kind of put a little something there, her footsteps, or kind of just little things that bring in that really, I mean, for me, it's very cool to bring that kind of creativity to a piece of work that you kind of think about it and you can do it and you can execute it and have it be subtle, but in a couple of viewings, oh yeah, she walked through and the footsteps of the girl kind of went through, and the ringtones of each one of the characters. I mean, I just love doing things for characters specifically. They have so much personality. I mean, there was Vincent's thoughts. I wanted to bring something like a certain sound to it, that it really wasn't just a big reverb of feedback, but kind of delays that kind of, somebody says something and it comes back in the same volume and it just repeats and repeats. Kind of just creative things I could do with each one of the characters in their part of the story. That's what I most wanted to do. There were many kind of normal technical challenges to break through, like the production sound and mixing in the ADR stuff, but that's really what I love to do. I mean, as soon as I see a piece of work, I can bring in creativity. That's what, and you were open to it too. Not really just a rigid vision. Of course, many directors have it, and it's fine. But you hearing my feedback and my approach to it was very cool.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very impressed by the whole project in a sense is, everyone wearing multiple hats. And, like you brought a lot of, just even the way you talked about the sound effects, right? Like you brought in so many, for lack of a better term, I'll call it like Foley, right? Whether it is, and things like that. And, I don't know if you recorded some of the stuff, and maybe we can get into that a little bit, but like you certainly added all that stuff. And I imagine on other projects, at the very least, like you're kind of getting that stuff as opposed to like also, sourcing it yourself. Again, whether it's like just downloading it or finding it or recording. Is that correct in my assumption?
Yeah. Most of the time, some things like very specific, like certain footsteps or certain mostly when you do many scenes that are very close, people talking one to another in close spaces, what you really want to do is bring in the sound of everything around them, their clothes, if they're in bed, the sheets and all that stuff. All that stuff has to be recorded in Foley, in a Foley style, so it sounds authentic, because you can't really source one movement to another and the file doesn't say movement of hand to hair to of girl dot wav, that doesn't exist. So you just really there's a scene between the two girls in bed. I mean, I really had to just kind of cull myself in bed and just kind of do all the Foley of the hand moving and the sheets and you bring up that stuff in the mix, and it brings you in. I mean, you kind of the best kind of sound. All of the sound designers that I admire always say the best kind of sound design is the one that you don't notice. The one that is just, if the story is immersing you in the thing that they're saying, and the sound is just supporting that, great. If at one point you're watching and there's a lot of crickets in that night, you did a bad job, because that's way too many crickets in a night scene. You just want to make it so that you can immerse yourself. So most of that stuff, you do it in Foley, in some kind of Foley. And the sword stuff, okay, it's kind of the LA sounds. So I try to get a lot of LA traffic jams and LA pedestrians, and kind of, so it brings authenticity to stuff I really don't have access to. Yeah. But it's good because each city, I have some of the cities, I have many Colombian and Latin American cities, but American cities all sound kind of different. I mean, LA is very car centric. So there's a lot of cars, but there's not a lot of people, because stuff is so far away that everybody has a car to go wherever. Instead of New York is very pedestrian, so you hear a lot of rumble of people running around with the cars and stuff like that. There's a lot of nuance in sound that you don't notice, and that's the kind of stuff I love to bring to a project.
Yeah, no, it's amazing because I mean, obviously, LA is a very central part of the story. You know, it's almost like a seventh character, if you will. One of the questions I have that I'm always fascinated, like when you go to that level of detail, especially it's, you know, just kind of you working on it, you know, obviously there's feedback from me, but for the most part, you know, I was kind of hands off in terms of like, I mean, for a lot of it, right? Like you would go off and do the, you know, that stuff, then deliver it back, and I give you that feedback. But how do you organize yourself when you're like working, you know, on that level of detail? You know, do you do a pass of like the dialogue first, then the sound effects, then the meat, like, or do you kind of take it scene by scene? You know, I'm curious.
Well, it always depends. Let's say in this project, I kind of hear dialogue first. I just fix all the dialogue as close as I can get it to sounding as intelligible as possible. I mean, without sounding fake or with so many plugins that you destroy the sound. I mean, to get it as close as I can and as the production was able to get it. I mean, many of the scenes you did it with one mic, and that's fine. I mean, one conversation with one mic, because that's maybe what you had at that time. So I had to work with that, and I listen to what they're saying first, if it's important or if it's a throwaway, and if the scene needs it. Then I start working on their person, so their footsteps, their kind of foley of the clothes, and if the scene needs it again. If they're eating something, if they have a cell phone or anything like that, I bring in those effects. And then and then the bed of sound, that is the traffic or the cafeteria in some scenes, or is it really quiet? So I try to always dialogue first, and anything that has characters or anything, dialogue first, then the personal space, the objects, and then the general sound. And if the scene has a central music, I do that kind of last. So if the song is talking about, has a theme about what the scene is about, I kind of mix it in a little more than the sound effect. I'll break down the traffic and bring a little bit more of the music, because that's a little more important than the traffic of LA in that specific scene, depending on what scene you're looking at. So that's more or less like I approach it. Always dialogue first. That's central.
Yeah. And you know, through no fault, like the dialogue was the biggest thing that we kind of worked through. Simply because, and I always knew for me on my end, it was always going to be a challenge, simply because, you know, we had recorded it with lavs, and you know, we didn't have a sound guy on the day. You know, I mean, take double us, and that's basically the entire crew for the movie.
Yeah. Believe me, I've seen that.
And that includes the actors as well. So you know, in that sense, we were kind of fixing that. And you know what, I'm very proud of the end result and things like that. You know, and so, and I know you and I have kind of talked about the methodology of it overall, but can you know, for anyone watching, can you know, you can go technical with it too. Can you highlight what the problems with the original audio were, and then kind of your resolution towards that?
Yeah, well, this brings me to kind of where I started mostly was in documentary TV. And here in Colombia, in public access TV, let's call it, is kind of the big channel of TV that they have here. A lot of stuff is documentary. So it's a guy in a camera, and maybe the director or a first AD that goes and talks to the person or follows them around. And by the point I started kind of cleaning up interviews in a motorcycle. There was a guy asking questions to the person driving while the motorcycle was moving, and I was trying to rescue that sound they had with one microphone. That's kind of my baseline of stuff that was almost impossible to save, but I was able to save that interview of two guys moving in a motorcycle.
That's incredible.
So yeah, and you kind of bring in, and that's the creative part. Let's say, so in this project, there was a lot of stuff that was kind of hidden by the lab. Maybe the lab had fallen, or through the editing of the movie, some of the scenes were not really. I mean, from one scene to another, the audio was not really one track, so it was two different scenes. So maybe the intention was different. That's why I need the whole all the files you had of audio and all that stuff, so I can kind of stitch together a dialogue. So in the case of the motorcycle, the guys stopped at one point and started talking, and some of the syllables they used in that I brought into the motorcycle thing, so I could rescue some of the audio that was impossible to save. So that's what you do in a project like this, when you had ADR and production sound, and maybe some of the tracks of production sound were very noisy because of the environment or whatever. That's totally normal. And you have the ADR track. So I almost always like to work with production sound because it has the actual intention of the scene and the emotion. So I always try to save the production sound with little bits of the ADR recorded stuff. Mm-hmm. That's kind of the stitching together of a dialogue track that it's many times it's very, very painstaking because you need a lot of processing and plugins, but you really need this kind of creativity. I mean, can I use a syllable from this to replace the at that wasn't there? And there were a lot of times when the labs cut out, but the other lab was working, so I tried to save a little bit of the other person's. I mean, it's when you look at a dialogue editing session of a documentary or small productions like this, the stitching of the dialogue is very intricate. Let's say you use all kinds of stuff. There's even my voice in that. My wife's voice was in some scenes in some Jane scenes that I needed kind of the or the. So you bring it in, you kind of pitch shift it, do all kinds of stuff, so it fits in the dialogue and it's seamless. My point always is that it's seamless and transparent, but you need kind of experience to use that to stitch together a usable dialogue track that is not maybe perfect, like the Hollywood stuff. I mean, my biggest eye opener, for example, was the Pirates of the Caribbean movies. When you look at those movies and they look great and they sound great, every single scene you see is ADR. Nothing in that whole trilogy or 5 films or whatever, there's a single word from the production track. Everything is ADR. So you look at it and it's kind of disconnected from something to me. Yeah. That's why I always try to use the audio that was recorded there. And if it's rough, you kind of fix it with the new tools that they are and a little bit of experience. So if anybody wants to do that kind of stuff, just practice. Just record somebody and try to stitch together a dialogue that is comprehensible and intelligible.
You know what's surprising to me? Like, I think for a lot of audiences are very surprised by that fact that most Hollywood movies are pretty much completely ADR'd. And also it's interesting to me, a lot of up and coming actors as well. And what I don't think they realize is that, like, it's also a huge skill set to be like you were saying, there's an intention on set, and it's sometimes because, like, you know, for newer actors, you know, because they're not in that habit, it can be a lot tougher to replicate that performance in an ADR booth. And I don't necessarily know the question there, but it is interesting to me, like, you know, in that sense, and you know, in a way, does it almost when you watch movies like a Pirates of the Caribbean, does it kind of take you out of, like, if there's, like, you know, things you notice about the sound, or can you kind of, like, just be like, all right, I'm just going to enjoy the movie? Well,
there's some things, like, let's say I'm total fanatic of Marvel movies. I mean, I love them as much as I love Paul Thomas Anderson and Lars von Trier and all those kinds of really indie films. The Marvel universe used that to their advantage. Let's say they created a world of sound and dialogue that lives in ADR, and you wouldn't have a point of reference to think, oh, that's ADR, because every single movie, they did it with that intention. So it sounds natural in that universe. But something that brings me out of the movies, I saw maybe the fourth film of the Pirates of the Caribbean. They were in a boat shooting stuff, and they were talking so low that it brings you out of it. Because if you're in a club and you're kind of talking loud.
Yeah.
And that's what many actors do when they have a club scene and everything is in mute. They kind of start screaming at each other because it's the sound is going to be, they gotta replicate like they are in a club. That happens in that movie. The Johnny Depp is talking in a volume like this. Everybody's shooting and going around and all kinds of explosions, and they're having a normal conversation. So that brings me out of it. That's what they didn't do in the Marvel movies, because they scream all the time and there's a thing flying and all kinds of stuff. They build a universe of sound that allows that to have realism in that universe. That's why it's so cool to me.
Yeah. No.
Also, let's say, like I knew, because I always watch those kind of making ofs and stuff. The last trilogy of Star Wars did the opposite. Most of the dialogue is from production. They cleaned it up, and also Christopher Nolan does a lot of stuff exclusively with production tracks. He really hates doing ADR, and that shows. And there's a little bit of roughness to the voice, and some of the scenes, for example, in Star Wars with Princess Leia that died in the middle of production. They had to keep the stuff because, of course, they couldn't record her. So every single one of her scenes is with the production audio. It sounds great. And the stuff with Luke Skywalker and they're talking, and there's a little bit of hiss of the microphone, and her clothing was kind of ill-fitted, but the intention was so strong between those conversations. It's totally real. So it's really how you approach sound in the director's point of view, let's say. If you like kind of that raw sound, kind of, there's a guy, Iñárritu, that did Babel and Birdman and that kind of stuff. He does everything in production sound, even if it's rough or destroyed, or Nolan or anything like that. Or if you have an approach of doing it super clean, like big movies, big romantic comedies, like the ones Nora Ephron did or anything like that. Those movies are ADR'd, but they try to do it kind of tastefully, let's say. And also there's an art to recording ADR, because you have to have it the best quality possible is with the same microphone they had in the same position they had. They show the scene, and the emotion has to be there. That's why, like you say, new actors have a problem with that kind of stuff, because the disconnect between them being in their living room or whatever, instead of the emotion of the scene, that's the disconnect in ADR of new actors. And I mean, it's the whole thing. That's why I love production tracks, even if they're rough.
Yeah, and I mean, too, I think, ADR is an art form in two sense. You have to match the performance, but you also have to match the timing to a degree. Obviously, like,
exactly.
You have the ability to play around with the shifting exactly. If they get if they start a sentence, a half a second later, that's fine. You can shift it, but like you can't shift if like I elongate a word and it's supposed to be, it just so it's and I find like too they can either match performance or they can match timing, but oftentimes the up and like it gets a little bit tough to be both in that sense, and it's interesting in that way.
The best thing about new tools is that timing, it's not really much of an issue as it was before, because the tools have gotten so much better. I mean, I use kind of the industry standard that is called Isotope RX7 that does timing, and you can do all kinds of manipulations to the voice so it stays as intelligible as possible, always with a little bit of criteria, because if you overuse anything that is kind of post-processing of anything, it's gonna sound or look or anything is gonna be terrible. You got to use it with tastefulness. That's why timing now is not as bad as an issue as it was, let's say, 5-10 years ago, even when when Isotope didn't have those kind of tools. The thing that is impossible to replicate is intention. I mean, if you have a love scene, or like I tell you, like we're in the bar and they have to talk over the radio that is really not there, that's just not, there's no plugin for that, let's say.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. I'm curious, kind of your, let's say, education, right? So as I'm kind of understanding it, you watch a lot of behind the scenes, which was sort of my film school, if you will, as well. And then part of it seems like there's a trial and error there. Like, you've worked on stuff in the past.
Oh, yeah.
That, but what about like, kind of a more formal education? Like what sort of classes, have you taken, whether, university or just on, whatever? I'm curious.
Because I went to, when I was, I'm 37 now. And when I was 18, I went to the US and was in Vegas with my sister for 8 years. I mean, I spent, my sister was living there. So I went to the community college there, and I started computer repair kind of career, because that's what my dad wanted me to do. I always loved sound and I always loved music, because that's my first love, and I wanted to do music. But my dad said, "There's no way you're going to the U.S. to study music, you crazy guy. So go do computers." So okay, Dad. So I started there, but the community college, the CCSN at that time, had just installed a new studio, and I was amazed by the amount of stuff, and I was already kind of making music by my own in a little cheap laptop. And I mean, like any new recording artist starts just small, and I was amazed by that, and started with one recording course in CCSN in that studio, and that was just eye-opening to the amount of things I could do. Nothing relating to post-production, everything relating to just sound and music. Then I validated my credits to go to UNLV, and I started there, and I couldn't really afford the whole school, so I had to drop out. So I had just my computer science degree from CCSN with that one course of recording that I loved. But I continued doing music all the time, and I did extra credit, and I just, at any spare time I could do, I went to the studio, and the professor there was very cool with me. So I started playing around with the console, and everything, sound and gear and all that kind of stuff, really just, I just love it. Then when I came back to the US, because my visa had just, the student visa was over, there was an opening for a job at he's kind of a relative of my mother's that had a production studio here in Colombia for documentaries and all that and that kind of stuff. And she said, "Oh yeah, this kid knows music." And I was like, "Yeah, I know music. Do you know how to do TV?" "Oh yeah, sure." And I went in there without having a single clue of how to do music or anything for TV, and they just threw an 50-minute episode at me, and I just started doing it. I did it kind of, I started raising up the dialogues and anything that was kind of weird, and I kind of tried to fix. And I had kind of a rapport with the sound guy there. He started teaching me little stuff, because we clicked so much on the gear and the love of sound and all that stuff. And he started teaching me these little things. And then as soon as that project ended, that first episode, I don't even want to hear it, because it's probably the worst sounding thing in the history of sound. But I started loving doing sound for images. And the next project was an animated movie, an animated series, a very small, short episodes of 5 minutes. And they said, "All right, you want to do this?" And I, "Yeah, sure, I'm great at it." And that way, they just, I guess I did something right for them to keep me, because I was in that company for like 10 years, more or less, doing just straight up sound for any kind of media. I did commercials. I did, and really without any experience at the beginning, just the love of sound and the love of being kind of meticulous. I've always been, I don't like just giving out something, all right, sounds great in the headphones, great. No, I just got to check it in this couple of speakers and this kind of thing. I guess that thinking got me into the rest of the projects, and they kept me in. And from then on, I just did post-production sound and music as well, because I've done a lot of music for a lot of animated and TV stuff, and it's great. I mean, it's been long and it's not been easy. And in this country, is that kind of work is not really that much appreciated. Let's say that my income is not like crazy high, or not even in Colombian standards. Let's say.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say that in a animated feature. I don't know. Let's see. I did a whole documentary, and if I change it to dollars, it's gonna sound completely sad. But I did a whole documentary because I loved it, and they paid me like $25 or something like that, and that was a good pay. And that one time, that was a long ago. I mean, I've been charging a little bit more and a little bit more, but everything is depending of the budget of the thing. But I was kind of came into it accidentally and loved doing post-production and music for picture.
Well, I can't speak for anyone else, but what I appreciate about you, and I imagine there's some truth to it with other people, but I think you would have a patience for this, and I think,
oh yeah,
and I think you're willing to listen. You know what I mean? Like, even when I gave you notes, there was never a time, we discussed of like what could be done, but you never told me ever straight out like, oh no, this can't ever improve or whatever. It was, by default, it was always, okay, I'll see what I can do. Right.
Oh yeah.
And so I think that's a big quality that I imagine those other people you've worked with saw within you. Cause I think that's great.
I guess.
I don't know. Like, I think too many times, hey, see, my dogs agree with me. But yeah, I think sometimes too many people, like, if they don't know something, they'll say like, oh, it can't be improved or whatever else. And then you just always kind of, it seems to me, just from knowing you and even this interview, you're always looking for that solution.
Oh yeah,
something better.
Because I've seen so many things. Like I told you, I did that interview and that motorcycle. My gosh, like a year and a half after being just presented to post-production. And I said, I don't want to be kicked out because I can't do an interview. And I guess this is how things many times in Colombia are. I mean, they are really low budget kind of productions. So that's the sound I'm going to receive. So why am I not going to try every single thing I can?
Yeah.
Apart from, let's say, from the Layla thing that, Carrie Fisher died. Well, there's not much we can do. And at that point I say, well, there's not much I can do. But from there, I mean, like I told you, man, so some of the Jane stuff, it's my wife saying, and then I replaced that vowel at the beginning of the sentence. So it was a whole thing. I mean, I just love being challenged to do something a lot better each time. And I guess, and there's not, let's say, a huge post-production industry here in Colombia. There are very, very good people at it. But really, the sound circle, let's say, the sound post-production is very, very small. I mean, I think we know each other at this point. There are ones that have been very successful doing Netflix things and stuff like that, but really it's a small circle. So it's really a specialty skill to have to do sound at the point where you say, I'll do it, and I'll do everything I can, no matter the budget. That's kind of my philosophy. Because okay, I'm gonna do until this because you paid me so much. No. I mean, I'm gonna do it. If I say I'm gonna do it to whatever budget there is. If not, I will say no, I don't want to do it. But if I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna do it all the way, no matter the budget. I just want to do it. and if the client is cool enough, of course, because there have been nightmare clients that you just want to, my God, man, what are you asking? And but of course, this was not the case. You were an amazing client, believe me.
Thank you. I appreciate that. One of the questions I wanted to ask you, because I think like with this pandemic, obviously a lot of people are getting used to working from home. But for you specifically, like, just talking in the larger context of, let's say, there are indie filmmakers out there that, let's say, would consider hiring you. Can you speak to the relationship and, like, in a sense, quell their any trepidation they might have about working with somebody that's not within their vicinity, right? Because I think a lot of times people, they want to be in the room for the changes and things like that. And, for me, like, our relationship, like, even though, I personally, I would have loved to be in the room with you and kind of be there, whatever. But at the end of the day, the result speaks for itself. And I thought, we did have a good system and things like that. But can you, again, just for the sake of, like, potential future clients, can you kind of lay them out, like, so that way they know, like, oh, this would work. I don't have to be in the room with him.
Oh, yeah. I mean, just before this pandemic, I would say, really, in a percentage kind of way, every single one of my of work I do, it's been remote. All of it. There's been clients I've known for 6 years and haven't seen them ever. Every single conversation we have is through WhatsApp. So really, the pandemic hasn't changed my business at all, because business here in Colombia, even if it's for the big channels or for the big outlets, it's all remote. Everybody's got their own stuff, because here, having a studio, let's say a huge post-production studio, it's such a astronomical cost that no production has the budget to kind of do their work at a huge post-production facility that here really doesn't exist. We have a couple, but they work with outside clients. So the work inside here, it's all remote. So there shouldn't be no trepidation to do it, let's say. The thing with my kind of work, that sound is such a small file that I can send it and receive feedback very fast. Is not the case, let's say, with colorists, that they have to work with a huge movie, 100 gigabytes or anything like that. That's really the only constraint for me, kind of file sizes, because the internet download or anything, but the conversation is going to be exactly the same. I mean, almost all of my clients, I mean, I really haven't stepped in a room with a director in so long, I can't even remember. And last year I did like 27 kind of projects, small, big, whatever. Every single one was like this, was through FaceTime or Zoom or whatever, and we just talk about it. I do it. I bring my ideas. He gives me feedback, and we send it to the big client or the big network, and they put it in their servers and just make it work. I mean, it's not really a constraint at all, because here, like I tell you, we can't really have the luxury of having such cool big facilities with a color over here and sound over here, and it's really a huge expense. And that's why it's really not a change, not such a big hit for me, the pandemic economy as it is, because you can do it like this. I mean, we're talking, we kind of have a feeling about it. I kind of get a feeling about how I can do it. And let's say, for example, and here the advertising is really big as well. And I have one of my best friends is really, really good at that, doing advertising work where it's all remote, but it's always in constant communication. You have to do 30-second spots, but you have to do like, my God, that man has made like 20 kinds of music for one spot, and the client doesn't like it, and this doesn't like it, but still it's remote. You just gotta talk. You just gotta be very concise what you're gonna bring to the project, and also the client has to be kind of attentive to what you say or what you send. and really get your idea across. If you're going to do it with your own gear, like I am, like many of my colleagues are, they have their own gear. You just got to get your message across of what you can do for the project, no matter if you're here or remote or. Oh my God! I just finished a short animated film with a girl from Estonia, and she and the musician knew only Estonese. I mean, I'm really sorry, I don't know the language they speak in Estonia, but she just sent me the music, and I just sent her little changes in English, and she did the changes, and we could do the whole thing. And I don't even know her face. I just know her typing habits, I guess. So remotely is not a constraint anymore. I mean, that's really.
Yeah, I mean, there's and like the online tools, like you and I used markers. You know, I would send you markers for audio files, and that's kind of how we kept track of stuff. But like whether it's I'm thinking of like Whipster.io, or you know, there's plenty of other examples there where
Frame.io or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Where it's an online tool, you just basically upload the video, and then, you know, as the video plays, you can literally put markers in there, and it works great. You know, at the time code you want, it works great with sound guys, but it also, you know, what's kind of cool about it, it does also work for color guys, because you can literally, you know, you can like say, oh, I want, you know, to fix this point right here for color as well. So like the tools are amazing for online collaboration.
And really, and what I've seen about, because one of the biggest projects I've done remotely was Shark Tank. They did a version of it. Oh, they have it still, a version of Shark Tank here in Colombia. And the thing was, they had to send me the whole reality show as it was shot, and I had to put music that was already done, of course, do the emotions of the people and the hits, and then when they shoot somebody, and boom, and you got to do the whole reality show kind of tension. And that was done in the most prehistoric way ever, because they saw the show. When I sent back a mix, they send me a screenshot done with their phone of the part they didn't like. And there were at least one episode that is 48 minutes long, had like 70 pages of little pictures done with their phone.
Did it have at least time
every
code?
Single bit they didn't. Yeah, not even time code at all. Because, because I don't know. And I did like 10 episodes of that, and it was insane. I mean, at one point I ran out of paper to print out all those little things. I had to kind of figure out, okay, this lady doesn't like this part, so I had to check it. And then I did another project, a very, very small YouTube series, that they used Coda, and then they used Frame.io to do the like you say, the markers for every single teammate, and the changes were sent. I mean, I've done it every single way, and you really have to be, because I really, really think that if you're going to be remote like this, and you need changes to anything, you have to be technologically smart. Because let's say if I didn't know you used Audition, I've never used Audition in my life, but I opened it. It looked like a DAW, and if you use it, just send me the file. I open it. Then I had the two sessions at once. Click on the marker. That's the marker. I looked at my Pro Tools session. That's where the changes. I'll do it. I've done it through Word files that they type up, like the one you sent. I've done it through EDLs. They send me an EDL file. I put it in Final Cut Pro, and then you have to be kind of technologically quick and savvy to not let technology get in your way. So if there's one way you got to do it, you got to learn at least 10 ways of doing things.
Yeah. And that's the cool part. There are 10 ways of doing it. And I think.
Yeah. Now it's crazy.
Yeah.
There's no excuse.
No, absolutely not. And I think, you know, for advice for anyone like working remotely, I say like, you got to be specific with your notes. Like one of the big things that I've always learned is whatever method works for you, you got to be specific. And I think too often times people are so general with their notes sometimes, and then they expect like a result back. And it's like, you got to provide the notes in order to get the specificity that you are looking for.
Oh yeah, please. Yeah, to all content makers and directors, when you say this scene doesn't work or something like that, or I can't hear the audio. We're talking about 80 minutes of audio. You got to be a little more specific what you don't hear. Yeah. And mostly is a couple of scenes that were kind of overpowered by music or something. But really, those kind of comments are pointless. You got to go to the at least one scene. Let's say this guy's talking, I can't hear him. Okay, I'll bring down the music. Oh, I can hear him now. Yeah. And that was the whole thing about saying I can't hear anything in the whole movie, or some crazy comment like that I've gotten as well.
How helpful was it? And you could be honest with it. You know, I realized at a certain point, I was like, all right, I've given him like so many notes. But I didn't want to like defeat your spirit of like, okay, like just based on the pure number of notes, like everything's bad. And also, you know, so like I looked to it like, I wanted to almost define, you know, what needed to be fixed as far as like percentage, you know, because I didn't want you thinking like we're 70% off when in fact we're just like 15% off, because that's a huge difference, right? And then two, you know, I also, for me at least, I at a certain point I tried to be very much like, oh, here's a marker of something that I really like. So for the, you know, so that way at least it gave you a frame of reference of like for the other stuff. If I say this, then you know, like try to get it closer to this because that worked. Was that, you know, did that help?
Yeah. No, of course. I mean, as close as you can get it. If you have a common sense about things, let's say there was a marker at minute 15 that said this click, okay. And then 17, and then at minute 17, okay, all that was good, so that's great. And then at 17, then 17.2, and 17.5, and 17, okay, then you say this whole scene from this point to this point is wrong. I mean, if you feel that the voice was too high 1 second and too low in the other one, I just grab that whole scene, scrub it, and then redo it. Just redo the dialogue, because most of the times, let's say our notes were about dialogue. Let's say that an ADR was too high, or this word was not really understood, or it kind of brought you out of it. If there's that close of kind of notes from director or anybody, you just grab the whole scene and do it again. I mean, it was no problem for me because I have the files, I have everything. And if you hear that as well, if the comment or the note resonates with what you hear, you might feel like the other person. You always, I mean, as a sound guy, you always have to put yourself in the position of the person that's listening, because objectively, there are very few sound people, let's say. And mostly, let's say, audiences or even directors or whatever, I'm not really that sound savvy, or the terms or anything, and that's fine. That's why I'm here. So what you do is kind of, okay, he's hearing this, so I over-process the voice, and you just have to figure out a whole thing. And if notes are really close together, you just do the whole scene. Even if the ending was fine, you can do it even better. And that's my philosophy about it. And that's what's great about your notes, because you were really clear about it. And let's say there's a party scene that was really, really, really tough because there was music, there was ADR, and you really couldn't hear it. So I did it a couple of times, and by the last time I said, okay, that's much better than the first one I sent objectively. So that's why it's great that you do that level of detail in your notes. And people, even in whatever cinematography or graphic or whatever, they have to be kind of open to, it's not criticism. They're just worried about their work. If you can do your work better, just always be open to listening the perspective of somebody else that is not on your field. Because if they were in your field, you wouldn't be necessary. I mean, that's my kind of thinking, I think.
Yeah. Now, as before we kind of wrap up, just a few final things. You know, and you kind of hinted at it a couple of times. You know, most of your relationship, like you have the whole relationship over WhatsApp, and that works. Yeah. But I remember you saying to me like you appreciated that, you know, that we video chatted because you don't get that ability, and it is mostly impersonal. So in that sense, would you, like anyone that you do work with, would you encourage them to have a more connected relationship with you, like you and I did, in that sense? Do you feel like having that helps the product, or, you know, if nothing else, it's just nice to kind of have that artistic connection?
Oh yeah, because I mean, in my part of the process, let's say in post production or even music, at one point, you're really at the end of the thing. I mean, it was already edited, or it's been on an editing process, and the editor and the director are very close together if it's not the same person in this case. And you're really coming at the end of the relationship. So a director or anybody expects you to know beforehand a bunch of things that he is already tired about saying. So he doesn't want to explain the project anymore. But for somebody like me, it's great to have just a small conversation of what your intention is. That's it. The movie is about this, and I would like it to be like this. I mean, just the intention and your creative spirit about the project. If it's a documentary about a bank, or it's a infomercial or whatever, what's your intention? That's almost always the biggest how do you call it? That if I'm not delivering on the product that the client wants or the director wants, many times it's because I really don't know what you want. And that small conversation at the beginning, even if it's like this face to face through the computer, or it's a chat or anything, just your creative intention of a project at the beginning is the best thing you could have, at least for me and for many of the guys at the end of the filmmaking chain, let's say.
Yeah, and I agree. I wish, that it was always that case. But one of the things that I, at least I saw from you, was when you watched the movie from start to finish, without kind of me needing to tell you what the intention was, like you had that intuition based on seeing the movie of like, oh, let's do this, So so I think you have that as well. And I think in lieu of people, having that connection with you, I think you have that, you've developed that ability, or maybe you had it, I don't know, of reading the movie for what it wants to be itself.
Yeah, because many times you don't really, that's why people come back to you, let's say. For me, many of the clients I have right now are people that I've known for at least 5-6 years, and I have a couple more each time that are new, that have been kind of, what do you call it, from person to person. That one person told the other one that this guy is good.
Reference.
Yeah, I've been referenced by people that I've worked with because of that, because they send me something and I just give them my perspective. Many times it's kind of right or kind of in the ballpark, so they don't really have to explain it so much. And that's why I guess that they come to me. Many directors just send me a movie and they say, have it by Monday or something. And we have such a rapport that I can do that. I can, okay, this guy did this, and I can send it back. You have to have intuition about what you're watching and what you want to provide for the project. And if it needs your help, if it's just technical help, also be aware of that. Not every single project that a sound guy or a graphics guy is going to do needs your creative input. It just needs your technical input. You got to be open to that. If a thing is already what it is and doesn't need your help, it just needs technical side about it, you can analyze it by what it is. Or in this case, we really wanted sound feedback, because sometimes people don't really know what they want, and that's fine. That's why anybody in my position can bring in their perspective to illuminate something in the creator's head. Like in your case, I did some of the reverb stuff, of the feedbacks and kind of stopping all the sound at one point, and that kind of brings you new ideas because I have a perspective about it. If a project needs it from you, that's kind of my take on it.
Yeah. Well, amazing. It's been fun catching up in an environment where we're not just talking notes for the movie. So it's been great. And I personally want to work with you on the next feature. Although the unfortunate part is I don't know. Unfortunately for us, I think it's with COVID and everything, it might be a while before. before that ends.
Yeah, that's a problem.
But
that's kind of the I've been saved by the animation industry because I've done a lot of animation work and music and sound design and mixing, and that's the industry that is most active right now in kind of my industry because of course everybody can be home doing animated stuff, but really the COVID has really put a really big roadblock on feature films and small productions that need people.
Yeah, no,
it's such a shame. But really, I would love to work with you again in whatever. Even the trailer for this.
Yeah,
whenever you have it.
We're gonna do the trailer. The trailer is gonna come out hopefully soon. I gotta kind of put it together. I have some versions, but we'll go from there. But in lieu of any interim projects, I wanted to do this for you. So if anyone out there is listening, like for me, I love learning from you. So that's the selfish part. And the unselfish part is sharing you with the world. So whether it's through upwork.com or audiorepublic.co, those are two places that people can connect with you, correct?
Yes. And thanks a lot, Phil. Really, really, really thanks a lot because this project has been truly so cool to do. It had its challenges and everything, but the relationship has been really great about it. It hasn't been, it's been almost perfect, and you weren't really rushing it or anything, and it came out great. We didn't have to really do many compromises with sound. We were always able to figure it out.
Yeah.
So thanks for this. Really thanks for this, and really I can speak English as well as Spanish. So
excellent. Well, thank you so much.
Easy to reach.
I'm truly, the final product I truly enjoy. I think it's, it'll be up to the world to decide if it's a good movie, but for me, it's a good little gem of a movie, and certainly from the technical standpoint. Certainly from the sound standpoint, it works. So.
Thanks a lot.
So appreciate you, and take care. And I'm sure we'll chat. I'm sure we'll chat before the next movie too. So.
Oh yeah, please, whatever. Even if you're going to do a commercial or even another podcast upload, I'll edit it for you if you want.
Awesome.
That's cool. Awesome. Yeah, thanks a lot, Phil. It's been really cool working with you, and anybody that wants to reach me, I do animation, sound design, music, all kinds of stuff. You can check out the website. I have a couple of things.
Yeah, and as always, for those of you watching, if you have questions or comments of your own, please, by all means, share, whether down in the comment section or on social media. I'm at Phil Svitek. Do you have social media?
Yes, I have the Instagram link. I can give it to you later because I'm really bad at it, and my wife is
No worries.
that knows it. You can maybe put it in the show notes or something.
Yeah, I'll your Upwork profile, your the audiorepublic.co link, all that, and your Instagram will be in the show notes there. So for anyone scrambling to find it, it is in the description box. So if you're not.
Oh yeah.
Anyway.
Oh yeah. Thank you very, very much for this.